What's up, guys? It has been a minute, but we are back here to talk about American Horror Stories, which is coming out in 1 week on FX on Hulu, which, we've talked a little bit on this channel ever since it was fully announced, and I'm still not entirely sure what that means. It's kind of weird considering the fact that, a lot of my international audience who watches this show, or at least this universe series, whatever they're calling it now, because there's a spinoff, they don't have Hulu. So I'm assuming it's coming on whenever you usually watch American Horror Story, or wherever you watch it. So I'm not here to talk about that. I am here to talk about my thoughts, speculations, and just general excitement and a little bit of a disappointment about this upcoming series and what we can expect. And joining me on this video is none other than Dallas from Deadass Serious. Man, why don't you say hello for everyone listening, and let's jump right into this discussion.
What is going on, guys, gals, and everyone in between?
Nice. Okay, guys, so we recently got a trailer for American Horror Stories, and it feels like they've been giving us a lot of this over the last couple of days without the general buildup that we're used to with the American Horror Stories brand. Not like, it hasn't been like Colt or Roanoke, especially not like Roanoke, where they're just throwing out bunches of teaser trailers because, have some connection or not really that much connection to the overall theme and plot of that season, and you're just left to speculate. I guess that's because it's a completely different spin-off series. They're not wanting to put as much time, resources into this series as they would their flagship show. And at the same time, it's not a one-season story. It's just 7 individual stories that are going to take place over 7 episodes. Something that they're using to sell FX on Hulu, or essentially just kind of grow this brand outside of the cable network series that started a decade ago, before this series kind of proved itself to be one of the biggest things left in cable viewership, and getting streaming deals and everything like that wasn't as lucrative as it is now. That is kind of the cynical way to look at it, but it's just the reality of the situation. Anyway, let's get into this particular series and the trailer that they gave us. Dallas, I want to ask you specifically about your thoughts on this trailer.
Yeah, for sure. When I first saw the trailer, it seemed a little been there, done that. It just seemed like, we saw a rubber person. We've already seen a rubber person. We're going back to Murder House. We've already been to Murder House. Like, there was just a lot of stuff that it seemed like, okay, when are we going to get to something new? And like Evil Santa, we were talking, we've already seen one of those. Like the drive-in episode, looking forward to seeing something new there. Honestly, I don't really know about any of the other plots to really say, like, I'm looking forward to this or that. We really just know about the Rubber Woman episode, the drive-in, the Evil Santa, and one more that I can't quite recall right now. I'm excited about it, a lot more so than when the cast video was released the other day. That was just very bare bones, and like we were talking about as well, just the kind of the trailer hype that we are used to. It's something that we're not getting, and I kind of miss it. At the same time, I understand why, so I'm not trying to like hold that against them or anything.
No, absolutely not. I like what you were saying with this being a little been there, done that. I kind of get that feeling too. And probably the biggest reason for that is just going back to Murder House. We've been to Murder House multiple times before in season 1, season 5, obviously season 8 with Apocalypse. And now we're going to go right back again. We have a confirmation that a lot of characters are coming back for those 2 specific episodes. But in general, it's not even the fact that, okay, we've been here, done that, we've seen Murder House before, but the idea that we're going to be getting, a homosexual couple moving in with their daughter, it's like, well, that's kind of how Murder House started, right?
Right. That's the reason the rubber suit's there in the first place.
Yeah, like, hand to God, man. When I heard that synopsis for these 2 episodes, I was thinking to myself, oh man, that's kind of cool. We're going to go back and see the origin story for that, even though, we kind of already got to see that in the very first season. And this trailer kind of disproves that, and it's, okay, we're just kind of relitigating the exact same thing that we saw before, just with different context, because instead of taking place in 2010 or 2009, whenever that's supposed to take place in the timeline, now it's 2020.
And was that because the Kaya Gerber, the supposed new rubber woman, was she part, I think I was reading she was part of like a sorority group of girls that, did they supposedly live there after the Harmons, or like how are they there, you know?
Well, no, that would actually be kind of cool, but that kind of begs the question: when does it take place? And
yeah,
because we've already seen things that take place not several years, maybe like a year after the Harmons because of Apocalypse. And how does all of that storyline play into this, or does it play into this at all? One of the things that you and I were talking about just a couple of weeks ago when we started getting a little bit more information about this series was, look, we have all of these characters, we have all of these locations that are going to be explored even more than we've already seen. We have the confirmation of the Rubber Woman. We're going back to places that we've already been, but in new and different contexts. Are we going to see this series play up the entirety of a multiverse concept that was kind of introduced in American Horror Story 1984? Or is it going to be connected to the broader or bigger universe that we've seen throughout the first 8 seasons?
1984 is a thorn in my side canonically.
It feels that
honestly, way. I really like 1984. That's why I really wanted it to be able to fit in like seamlessly. We all know, certain characters and additions, stuff like that made it just clash with, stuff that had been set up previously. But I don't know. I would be okay with it if they made it known in the show. This is Murder House, but it's not the OG Murder House. This is taking place in, another world. If they were able to make that known, and it's not something super fans find online and they're, that's how they find out that it's not in the same universe, like with 1984, I would be okay with that. I'd be open to the idea I'm open to a lot if they just execute it well. Mm-hmm. That's all.
Well, we know that Violet's coming back, right? And Tate, although there's a little bit of confusion, at least on my part, about that, because it was American Horror Story Double Features Instagram that threw out the picture of Tate on set, and they're filming around the same time, so it was a little bit confusing, although it would make a lot more sense for him to show up in this when they're going back to Murder House than a completely different storyline. But, I mean, to each his own. I'm not entirely sure what they want to do there. The idea of them both coming back, it could be really easy to set up, and probably a little brilliant to set up in the very first 2 episodes, that this isn't connected to the overall main universe of American Horror Story, because we're starting at Murder House, and these characters are different than the ones that we were introduced to and reintroduced to in American Horror Story Apocalypse, and thus everything that you're going to see here is kind of branching off of the time travel shenanigans that were introduced in Apocalypse. And all of that led to all these different branching universes, different branching American Horror Stories that don't deserve their own season, but this is what's going on in the multiverse of American Horror Story content. Like, I know that's crazy, but it would be interesting. It would be interesting just to kind of plot all that out instead of saying like, oh, this is all connected and we keep going back to Murder House. I mean, it's like, at this point, to me, it feels like, okay, it's like having like 11 or 12, 13 Amityville horror movies like they have now. It's like no one really wants to watch all of those movies because it's so lame.
Right. I just want something new. That's like they have the potential and the opportunity to expand the universe, and especially when it's self-contained episodes. It doesn't need to be something where it's like, oh, that's going to tie back into Coven, or that's going to tie back into Freak Show. It can be its own thing, and that's where I want them to run with it. Like, they have every opportunity to do something new, and they want to Go back to Murder House. Why not?
Well, go back to the most recognizable thing in the entire franchise, right?
Right.
I mean, like, but from what we know, though, it's not going to be completely devoid of new content. I mean, there's stuff there, right?
Right. In the trailer that they just released, you can see, like, it looks, and the way they edit it looks like it may be in the Murder House episode, but there's like a devil or a demon that shows up. We haven't seen one of those. Like, it was a horned, devil entity. But other than that, we've seen Evil Santa. It looks like Billy Lord was playing a witch. We've seen those.
We've definitely seen that before.
People, I wish they would retire some ideas for like a couple seasons and then revisit them later. But Ryan Murphy's gonna Ryan Murphy.
But I gotta admit, though, from the trailer, the one interesting thing I kind of took from this, and I don't know if this is what's going to happen, but it looks like there's a drive-in movie sequence somewhere in the show, right? And I was wondering, like, kind of jumping off the idea of this just being kind of a branch off of everything going on in the American Horror Story universe, or stuff that isn't generally connected to the overall series. What if the idea of a drive-in movie and B movies is what's driving all of these plots?
I'd be down. It's kind of like the drive-in episode seems like they're showing The Ring, like the VHS, but they're showing it to a whole drive-in full of people, and who knows what consequences will come of that.
That's my point. The look and feel of this series doesn't feel like it's a part of the universe. And I know a lot of that should probably come down to the fact that we're talking about a series that's been on for over a decade now. When we first saw Murder House, the way that we filmed television was not the same as we do now. Obviously, streaming content has a lot more, it has a crisper feel than what they put on cable these days, for better or worse. And you go back and you ultimately, you're not using the same sets as the other time. You rebuild them, you light them differently. It just looks crisper and cleaner. But every time we see Murder House in this past trailer, it just looks different. It looks like it's outside of the universe that we're familiar with, and that somebody was just making it crisper and cleaner. So if the backdrop is that this is literally American Horror Stories, where somebody has put together like 7 haunted films of varying qualities and stories or whatever, and showing it to audiences who are then being haunted or tracked down or whatever it might be, that would be interesting to me. Maybe it doesn't go as far as otherwise an anthology series could go, but a backdrop, it works for a couple episodes.
See, and that would have been a good reason to put the drive-in episode last, is the episode could begin with them showing the previous episode, like the ending of it. We see that and it's like, oh shit, it's actually something these people are aware of and watching as well. And I don't know, it gives me very The Ring, and I was thinking something else, I can't remember what, but if it possesses people or something, I'm down for that. Like we've done haunted videotapes, we haven't done a haunted drive-in like that. That's pretty cool.
Oh man, I really like that idea too. There's so much possibilities, and you sit there and you think of American Horror Story and all of the things that they have done. I remember back watching it, I think in 2012 or whatever, when Asylum was coming out week to week, and I was like, there is no way that you can do a third season after this. They have literally touched everything possible that you could do with horror. And in one way it's true, in one way it's not, right? Because I don't think they've ever really topped that season, but they've always found a way to kind of recreate the wheel every single season and do something unique and original, kind of fun. Sarah Paulson recently came out and said that Roanoke was not her favorite season, and I get that, but one of the reasons I do like that season is because it kind of played up the formula and it had a legitimate reset halfway through the season that kind of shook everything up and made it fun again, right?
I loved it.
And hopefully that's exactly what they do with Double Feature. I mean, it seems to be the promise of the season. So I'm looking forward to that. But this is a completely different beast, and it needs a reason for us to care because it isn't part of the main story. In fact, one of the biggest draws, at least in my opinion, for American Horror Story is the characters and the building of the plot, the twists and everything, not just by one anthology episode, but through the course of an entire season, where we get to think and speculate about what's going to happen and how all of it's going to come together. And as the years have gone on, how are they all going to be connected to the previous seasons and the future seasons that we're going to see? And how can we bring back characters and situations and monsters and all this other stuff back in the future? This is a completely different beast, in my opinion.
They're not beholden to, we have to figure out how to tie this and connect this dot to that. Like, I like that it's a self-contained thing. We'll see how contained that stays. Ryan Murphy had initially talked about it was going to be a complete disconnect as far as like the anthology series went for American Horror Story, and they weren't supposed to connect at all. And then about Coven, I think around then is when he started saying like, look for the connections, they're there, and we'll actually start making more cohesive stuff down the line. And they did. Yeah, no, it's it's gonna be one and done. There's not much to really discuss or talk about, I feel like, until after we see it, because right now we don't know anything about anybody or their motivations, what their characters like, how they're acting, the story itself. Like, we don't really have anything to go by other than our imaginations, but we have plenty of that. So
as a fan, do you think that that's going to be a detriment to the series? Will people not gravitate to it as much as they did the original because of that? Or do you think that that's something that the series needs? I mean, generally, I am very curious as to what you think and everybody else.
I feel like it's going to be... Now there will be something for everybody. I feel like there's been people who've watched the show. They don't like how it goes off the rails halfway through the season, stuff like that. They may actually come back and sit and stay like, this episode's good, this episode's not, but I will watch the whole show. Whereas with American Horror Story, they might have turned a season off 2 episodes in, they never watched it anymore.
Oh man, that's so true. I can't tell you how many people who come to my comment section or just people that I talk to in general who say that every season of American Horror Story starts off with so much promise and then falls apart by episode 4 or 5.
I can't disagree. I love the show, but it always happens. And it started really bad in Coven.
Oh yeah. Coven, and for me it was Apocalypse. I really liked Apocalypse when it was airing. I was excited for it every single week, but like in retrospect, it's just like, well, what really happened? It was just a flashback show.
Basically, like, there was the first 3 episodes, and then we get the lead up to that, and then everything gets erased. So it's one of those, it was all a dream. But the whole season really didn't.
Yeah.
Even Return to Murder House got reversed.
Oh my gosh, yes, for sure. All of it was a little bit too much for me. But,
yeah.
I get it. Some people have a lot of different opinions about the last couple of seasons of American Horror Story. Myself, personally, 1984 holds up to be one of the better ones of the last couple of years, just because it didn't take itself super seriously. It didn't kind of, marry itself to the mythology that was set up in the last ones, and it just tried to have fun. Like, every episode of that season
Billy
was
Lord.
super fun.
Seriously, like, every character was, like, they sold it. Billy Lord the entire time. Like, Montana all the way.
Exactly.
I loved Montana. Like, she was nuts, but she was almonds as far as nuts go. She was great.
I love it. I love it. No, and I agree with you. And I think a lot of people who are listening to this would agree with you that something for everyone. I'm excited to go back to Murder House, even if it's not going to be, the Murder House that we know and love. And I'm happy that it's going to be the first couple episodes, and then we can kind of move on. And that's what I'm really hoping for.
Right, they got it out of the way.
You get it out of your system. You're not going to need to go back to all these different things that we see, and we can have more episodes like the drive-in or whatever that devil guy is,
right.
or Danny Trejo's Santa, which is going to be
right,
which is going to be awesome. Like,
I can't wait, man.
Anyway, guys. So, guys, if I didn't already say, Dallas is covering American Horror Story content on his channel, Deadass Serious. You can go check him out in the description section below. Hope everyone is having a fantastic day. Obviously, Dallas is going to be back here to discuss the ongoing season of American Horror Stories, as well as, American Horror Story double feature, the 10th season in the long-running horror franchise.
Finally.
Hope everyone is having I know, for freak.
I can't wait, man. It's been so long.
It's been so long, dude. Man.
I know. I feel like
I can't wait. I told you. Thursdays. You got.
Oh yeah.
You gotta just be on call on Thursday.
Oh yeah.
You and I can sit here and discuss it and everything. I've done it for years now. I've done covering this show by myself, and while fun, it's never as fun as having a legit conversation about what to expect and everything. So
exactly.
One thing I would really like to do is Thursdays or Fridays or something for those couple weeks is just discuss it. We can have our general discussion on each episode. Not the review or whatever, but, general discussion.
Yeah, for sure. I'm down.
All right, guys, we're going to leave it at that. I hope everyone's having a fantastic day. It's been real.